On behalf of Kutch and FES Stiftung, let me welcome you all to this webinar on boosting green economy. Is electric mobility the way forward in Rajasthan? Before beginning the session, I would like to express my gratitude to FES for their support. In fact, the support of FES has been as constant support since many years. Furthermore, to the government of Rajasthan and the transport department, as they have been supporting and engaging with Kutch on the issue of electric vehicles for more than 2 years now. We are glad to have, we'll be soon having Sri Ravi Jain, the Transport Secretary and Commissioner, Government of Rajasthan, on this webinar today. He has got held up in another meeting. These are, how things function in the government. So I suppose can't blame him. Earlier, we have also hosted Sri Rajiv Sarup, the former Additional Chief Secretary, Transport, who retired as Chief Secretary, on our roundtables regarding electric vehicles. COVID-19 has presented India with an unprecedented economic, humanitarian, and healthcare challenge. However, from the environment's perspective, the sudden drop in air pollution levels in metropolitan cities due to the lockdown was one of the few silver linings in the cloud in the early days of the pandemic. Emissions fell drastically, skies cleared, and residents in Delhi, Mumbai, Jaipur, and other metro cities enjoyed clean air after a long time. However, that happiness was short-lived as the stubble burning in nearby states has again plunged the cities into a toxic smog of air. For the transport sector related challenges, especially vehicular pollution, traffic congestion, and fossil fuel dependency of the sector, EVs are the potential answer. However, as with most transformative solutions, this prospect too faces several challenges. Most importantly, the economics of such solutions are such that viability remains a challenge. If this is dealt with, then the necessary hard and soft infrastructure required for the successful rollout becomes a hurdle. In addition to these, the manufacturing capacity of such technologies in the domestic hubs becomes prudent, particularly in the current times. And finally, adoption of such solutions depends upon acceptability by the consumers at large. Such a complex web of structural issues makes it all the more important that efforts are made in order to enable a just transition in such cases. Hence, the e-mobility transition is poised to open gateways for new business and livelihood opportunities. However, given the high degree of informality in the Indian workforce, it is envisaged that the impact of EVs would be different in the Indian job ecosystem, both qualitatively and quantitatively. The transition will entail losses in jobs across the formal and informal segments of the automotive ecosystem, which are exclusive to the ICE value chain, as well as the addition of new roles based on the requirements of the EV value chain. Thus, the transition must be just, sustainable, and inclusive. Towards this end, Kutch has executed a study supported by FES to explore the impact of e-mobility transition on the quantum of jobs in Jaipur city and their qualitative aspects such as informality, gendered employment, and skills. I'm also pleased to inform that our efforts in this space do not end here. We are continuing to strengthen the discourse around electric mobility and the transition to it in a just, sustainable, and equitable manner with the support from our partners like the FES and the Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. Both their representatives are here in this webinar and I welcome them particularly. With that, I would like to call upon Manvi Kulshe's Program Advisor, Economy of Tomorrow, FES India, to deliver her opening remarks. Manvi, over to you.
Thank you, Pradeep. Good evening, everyone. I'm Manvi. And like Pradeep just introduced, I work as program advisor with the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung India office. And along with my colleague here, Anurag Shankar, and our partner, Scott, I welcome you to this webinar. For those who are not very familiar with our organization, let me just give you a quick introduction. Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, or FES, is one of the oldest foundations in Germany, kind of a think plus two tank, which remains loyal to the legacy of its founder, Friedrich Ebert, who was the first democratically elected president of Germany. We work on the core ideas and values of social democracy, that is, freedom, justice, and solidarity. Our international cooperation work is spread in more than 100 countries around the world. FES has been active in India since 1980s, building platforms for exchange of progressive discourses like these and also fostering debates on national, regional, and global level. Anurag and I, we work in a unit called Economy of Tomorrow, where we look at transformative discourses dealing with three mega trends in India, which is energy transition, urbanization, and digital automation. And all of these also from the perspective of climate change as well as future of work. The two other cross-cutting work or the units at our office are labor and industrial relations and gender and social justice. I want to make three quick points here. Firstly, and actually, a lot of what I wanted to say is already being said by Pradeep in the opening speech, but maybe I'll just reiterate for emphasis purposes. Firstly, in a recent report released by the World Meteorological Organization, which is titled State of Global Climate 2020, uh, it says, spells out clearly that despite of the COVID-19 and the resultant stalling of economic activities, 2020 is the second warmest year on record. It means that the global mean temperatures were around 1.2 degrees above pre industrial levels. And this is for the period between January and October 2020. And unfortunately, the accelerated pace at which the economies restarted across the globe, almost with vengeance, will only push this up further. Also, regardless of the pandemic, we saw that there was no respite in nature's fury. We had the devastating cyclones, Amphan was there. We had the seasonal urban floods like in Mumbai, year over again. And we were as habitually unprepared to deal with them as in the past. Um, Let me just reiterate it one more time that unless we turn this pandemic induced circumstances into an opportunity and start building a climate resilient future, we are heading faster towards Zoom or doom, faster towards doom. See, Zoom is so much in my way now than expected. Secondly, as progressive actors, I feel that we should not just work on sustainable futures, but um, like said before, a climate resilient and inclusive sustainable future with gender justice and climate justice at its core towards a just energy transition. And by this, I mean just not a green future where the products are green, but our processes, our production, technologies, policies all have to be green and in sync with each other. We see a lot of investment that goes into green technologies, innovation, R&D, and also in renewables, but we definitely need more investment in climate resilient infrastructure and services, and not only the financial kind of investment but also a very strong political and social investment as well. And this transition, I believe, can only work if it includes willingness and participation of each and every member of society as equal stakeholders, be it the people at top echelons of policy making or the marginalized sections, especially say women or informal sector workers, small enterprises. All these need to be included in this transition. And more than all this, I also think that we as the progressive actors need to invest in working with those who have the economic and political power. We have for long remained at at the two ends of the spectrum, and I think economic stability, sustainability is as important as ecological sustainability, and we must work towards bringing these two closer. And I think that this study is a positive step in this direction. with the dual objective of pushing for greener technologies led economic gains and alongside creating a very strong case for green jobs. And both of these at a very scalable and transformational pace. And for this, I would sincerely like to thank all the experts and resource persons who have contributed through their knowledge and experience, and the esteemed panelists and the key change makers who are present here today to reflect on the study. And more importantly, the team at Cuts, Uday, Sarthak, Trineni, Aman, Akshay for conceptualizing, working out the finer details. I mean, there is a they have crunched a lot of numbers in this study, putting actual numbers to the transition, which is usually what catches the eye attention or the eye of the policymakers, and also for carrying out the study in spite of the COVID associated challenges. I mean, it's not easy at all doing a study remotely, but in the end, it's all good. And also, opening up the possibilities for this transition, you will see when the study is presented to you in a while. And I hope that beyond this study as well, and when we work further on it, we would find support from all of you in this journey. So thank you everyone for your time, and I hand it over back to the CUTS team.
Thank you, Manvi. May I now request Trineni to please present the study. And Trineni, you have more than 5 minutes because we're still waiting for Ravi Jain. So you could do it, your presentation in a
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Trineni, Senior Research Associate with Cuts International, and I will quickly take you, or as we have more than 5 minutes, I'll take you through the description of the study that was conducted by Cuts with the support of FES, and also the key themes that emerged out of the study. Akshay, can you please move to the next slide? Right. So I'll begin by giving a description of the study. As Manvi rightly pointed out in her opening remarks, we are aware of the impact of climate change, and we are living through it. So it is imperative that the future of transport, because transport sector is one of the most polluting sectors currently, it is imperative that it is going to be electrified. And there is a transition happening at a quite fast pace from petrol and diesel vehicles to electric vehicles. So we started out with this study with the objective of understanding how this automotive ecosystem is going to change with the coming in of electric vehicles. So who are the players who are going to be coming in, which stakeholders in terms of manufacturing of vehicles, in terms of operations, in terms of sales. So who are the players who are going to be there, who are going to be coming in, and who are going to be probably facing the brunt of being phased out. And having understood that particular dynamic ecosystem, we then moved to estimating the kind of gains and losses in employment or livelihood opportunities that we would have for these different stakeholders who are there in the entire automotive ecosystem. So the methodology that we mainly used was, we started with an ecosystem mapping process where we mapped the different stakeholders, and we did this to the diverse perspectives of the experts from the industry and from the startups who are associated with the electric vehicles or with internal combustion engine vehicles. And for every different kind of stakeholder that we spoke to, we interacted with, they had a different perspective of the entire value chain of automotives and who are the main players. So we tried to put them all together in one space, and then we define the different job roles that are coming up, and we devised a calculator that would help us understand the number of vehicles that would be required on the road to meet certain environmental targets that India has set for itself, and if India is to meet that target, and if we have those number of vehicles on the road, then the simultaneous job creation that would be happening across the value chain as a result of that. So I'll come to explaining the calculator in a bit, but I'll just say that our approach, why it stands out, is because first of all, we adopted a source to sink approach, which starts right from the manufacturing of the components and goes till the vehicle, the end of life of the vehicle, where it is either being recycled or scrapped. And we looked at every process that was involved in the in the value chain. And the calculator that we devised, that was also that's also a very dynamic tool that we have developed on Excel, which can give in different results for different inputs that we put in. So if for any scenario that India is aiming for itself, or for even at the city level, we can have different results of the number of vehicles required as well as the number of jobs that can be created. Akshay, can you please move to the next slide? Right. Firstly, I'll discuss the main ecosystem mapping that we did. So we used a source to sink approach, and after our interaction with about 30 odd kinds of stakeholders, we came up with this entire matrix of players, as I'd like to call them, in the entire automotive ecosystem. Now, this includes this includes players who are there in ICE vehicle manufacturing, internal combustion engine or petrol or diesel vehicle manufacturing, and also includes stakeholders who are involved in electric vehicle manufacturing and operations of both kinds of vehicles, assembly of both kinds of vehicles, sales of both kinds of vehicles, and finally end-of-life processes of both kinds of vehicles. So if you take a look at your screen, you'll see that there's a different color for every process of the value chain that we have used. And this entire matrix is the entire ecosystem, all the different kinds of job roles, all the different kinds of livelihood opportunities that can be coming up, it can be found out from this entire, from this ecosystem that we have mapped. I'll give a brief example. So if you look at, this ecosystem sort of gives you, this diagram gives you the linkages between the different players who are there, and how that is done. I'll just give you an example of that. So we have, say, EV manufacturers over here, and we have automotive component manufacturers in orange for EVs, and original equipment manufacturers for ICE vehicles. So as of now, since they are single colored, they are only interacting with other original equipment manufacturers for ICE vehicles. Similarly, automotive component manufacturers for electric vehicles are at the moment only interacting within themselves, within that category of players. And if you look at someone like the fleet aggregators or the skill training centers that we found out, so fleet aggregators are someone who are present for both ICE vehicles and electric vehicles. So their role is there in both the ecosystems. So because they are involved in different processes like sales and operations, they're involved in business to business sales, they're involved in the operations part of the value chain. So they play an important role, and they are also one of the potent job creators going forward in the automotive ecosystem in an indirect job role. Also, skill training centers will be playing a very important role, as their importance comes in at every stage of the automotive value chain, and for every component in the EV ecosystem. So that's how their importance is established. So this is how we have devised an entire ecosystem, and this actually has helped us to understand the direct and the indirect job roles that are being linked to electric vehicles.
Nani, Mr. Ravi Jain has arrived.
Okay, sir.
Let me welcome Mr. Jain.
Right, and okay.
Please carry on.
Okay, so I'll just take maybe 2-3 minutes more, and then we can move to Mr. Jain. Akshay, can you please move to the next slide? Right. So I'll come to the calculator and I'll come to the main themes that emerged out of this. So our calculator, the main assumption that we had was the climate commitments that India has for itself, which is the INDC, or the intended nationally determined contributions that India has set for its carbon emission intensity reduction, as well as for its power generation, which needs to shift to non-fossil fuel based. So keeping those in mind, we tried to find out that if India had to meet that target, the number of vehicles that it would require to have on road by 2030. Now, a limitation of our study, the scope of the study is limited to passenger cars across two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheeler segments. So using that framework, we found out that by 2030, we're going to need 2.1 crores of electric passenger cars in two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and four-wheeler segments across the segments in India, at the India level. And similarly, when we extrapolated it down to Jaipur city level, we found that out as 18.6 lakhs of vehicles across two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler segments, passenger cars, by 2030. So that is a huge number in itself, if we have to consider. And if we have 18.6 lakhs of electric vehicles being manufactured and operated, then we estimated the number of jobs across different roles that could be created. And for that, we used the help of the ecosystem. And we found out that we're going to have close to 46,425 jobs being created. And these are mostly in pre-manufacturing, vehicle manufacturing, assembly, as well as operations. That are the different categories that we considered. And we used benchmarks, current benchmarks for the employment intensity and the number of vehicles being manufactured, and we extrapolated and found out these results. Similarly, we found out that there are going to be phasing out of certain jobs in component manufacturing, mainly because electric vehicles have much lesser moving parts as compared to ICE vehicles, and there we're going to lose out on certain jobs. So we found out around 14,408 jobs are going to be lost, but the net employment generation in Jaipur city is going to be 32,017 job creation by 2030. Now, the redundant roles are mostly going to be in component manufacturing, as I already mentioned, and also in informal repair and maintenance shops. As the repair and maintenance, this is what we got to know from our interactions, is that repair and maintenance in electric vehicles becomes much lesser required as compared to ICE vehicles. Also, automation is going to play a very important role. And if as automation comes in, the roles that are going to come up are more going to be in the supervisory form. But that's going to be a benefit for women in the automotive ecosystem. It will be a booster for women in the automotive ecosystem, which is currently in a nascent stage in India. Emerging roles will also be based on software and electronics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. Jobs mostly in the dealerships or in the sales aspect of electric vehicles are going to remain neutral, and fleet aggregators, drivers, car drivers, cab drivers, they're going to have witness a neutral, a positive effect. And charging infrastructure providers or operations part of the value chain is going to see a rise in the number of jobs and in the type of roles that are going to come up. But skilling is a very important thing. Skill development and reskilling of the existing workforce will be required to facilitate this particular change. Akshay, can we move to the next slide, please? So the main themes that we got from the study, from our quantitative and qualitative analysis, and also this will be setting the tone for the rest of the discussion, would be firstly, strategically tackling the rapidly advancing technology. So what by that I mean, technology is evolving, and as we know, electric vehicle is an evolving and disrupting technology that has come into the automotive space right now. And as an electric vehicle, as they say, is more of a computer with wheels than than an ICE vehicle. So it is very important for the manufacturers and the startups who are in this realm to be keeping up with the changing technology in order to actually ride this particular change. And one of the ways in which that can be done is by bringing more of the jobs to India. As we know right now, 80% or more of the manufacturing of electric vehicles, of the parts of electric vehicles, is happening abroad, and it's only assembly that's happening in India. But as we have witnessed with the pandemic, that the focus should be more on Atmanirbharta or self-reliance, and it is also something that's being given a policy push. So it is very important to be creating a scope, a market, an environment for bringing the jobs back to India, creating manufacturing hubs, and encouraging local manufacturing, so that, and that's going to be one of the major drivers for livelihood opportunities, and that's where the chunk of jobs are going to be created across different roles, across different skill levels. Along with that, another main enabling factor for the electric vehicle life cycle will be the creation of a robust charging network, and that is also going to be one of the major creators for livelihood opportunities. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be very, very important to focus on skilling as well as reskilling of the existing workforce, if we do not want to lose out on the people who are engaged in the automotive sector right now. And skilling would also mean bridging the gender gap, because we can have more women, and we can have women representation across the value chain of the electric vehicles. And I think that focusing on these 5 aspects are going to make this transition to an environmentally sustainable option also a just and inclusive transition. So with that, I would like to keep the floor open for the discussion. And Akshay, could you please put it to the last slide? Thank you. And over to Sarthak.
No, thank you, Trinani. Let me welcome Shri Ravi Jain, Transport Commissioner and Secretary, Government of Rajasthan. Wanted to mention to you that in terms of my opening remarks, I also mentioned, Raviji, that we've had the fortune of engaging with you and the Transport Department on electric and EV policy since the last 2 years, and we hope that we'll be able to do this. With that, I'd like to invite you to deliver your keynote address, as well as release the report which has just been presented by Trinani. Over to you.
Good afternoon, Pradeep ji, and good afternoon, all the members of the CUTS and other invitees. This is the opportune moment to discuss about the electrical vehicle policy, which we have presented to the government just. And even before that, before presenting this policy, we have discussed with the CUTS, because they are now studying about the electrical vehicle policy all over the country and the world, and how to best lead to the best and optimum policy initiatives in Rajasthan. See, in Rajasthan, the number of vehicles which have been registered are now coming to around 2 crores. And I think the amount of pollution which is being created by them, most of them are diesel vehicles, and they are creating a lot of pollution hazard. So this is the right time to go for electrical vehicles. Everybody knows that these are the emissionless mode of transfer. And so under FAME and even all the rules and regulations of NGT, we need to enhance the purchase of EV vehicles in our state, and give initiatives and give incentives to the purchase of these EV vehicles. So we have presented the EV policy to the government, and the financial implications which it will have for the government are now there to be assessed. And we think this policy is the key policy for the coming, coming future for our posterity. And the amount of research which is going into electric vehicles these days, I feel in coming days, even the prices and even uh, the prices of these vehicles will come down. You see, we are planning to give a lot of incentives on upfront purchases of these vehicles, incentives in the manner of just cutting the cost of that vehicle for the customer, in the sense of reducing the price, looking at looking at the looking at the battery's capacity, according to the battery's capacity. Also, we are looking at cutting the taxes, the one-time tax which is being levied on the vehicles. We are proposing 100% reduction, 100% exemption for the tax, and we are promoting both commercial as well as private vehicles for this. And as far as charging stations and swapping stations are concerned, we also would like to give incentives for the place where these charging stations are there. We also would like to uh, go for the conversion of these places from residential to commercial or other thing free of cost in the LSG or UDH area where they are. Uh, we also want that the public parking places which are there, they be reserved first for these green plate number holders, as we say, these electrical vehicles. They begin priority in the public parking areas. And even the toll taxes, there should be some exemption of state toll taxes, if any, or some concessional toll on the toll taxes. And especially there are few areas like heritage areas, tourist areas, especially green zones, where only green vehicles be allowed. So there are many of these uh, policy initiatives or policy salient features which have been put into our policy, electric vehicle policy of Rajasthan. And I think Pradeep ji and his team has gone through that policy. I just want to know the suggestions which they can give us. They must have studied various policies all across the country. Delhi government, Jharkhand government, Uttarakhand government, Chhattisgarh government. They have their own electric vehicle policies, and there might be few points. There might be few things which are better there. So while making the policy or while finalizing the policy, we can still have opportunity to make some amends in that policy. So with that, I'm thankful to Mr. Pradeep ji and his Cuts organization to invite me here, and I would like to hear from them. What are the major points which can be, amended in this policy, which the draft of which I give to you?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Raviji. And it was very nice to have heard you, including outlining all the incentives that you have put into the policy to promote the use of electrical vehicles. We have been offering you our views on the draft policy that you made, and we'll be happy to engage further on that particular issue. What I gather is one of the best draft EV policies has been made by the Delhi government, which many other states are now looking into, and that is something which I thought I would leave you with as. Now, this, Raviji, this, what I would also like to mention that this project is being supported by the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, the German Political Foundation, and we also have a future project, as you know, I mean, in fact, we met you and spoke to you about the Shakti Energy Foundation, who are also both present in this event, and they'll be very happy to, they would have to have further discussion with you on how to improve electric mobility in Rajasthan. And of course, there will be lessons that we will learn here. And being situated in Jaipur, though we are a global organization, we'll be happy to see what best practices we can evolve here under your supervision and leadership, which we can then replicate across the country and share our successes with them, so that Rajasthan becomes a model state also in this particular area. With that, let me
Definitely, we
now.
are open to all the sessions.
Sorry?
Definitely, we are open to all the sessions that you put forth.
Yeah, I know. Particularly, I would like Rajasthan to be a leading state in the country, which others would like to replicate or follow. That is what I would like you to take up the challenge with us, and we'll be with you hand in hand and shoulder to shoulder. With that,
Thank
let
you.
me request Sarthak to please moderate the panel discussion which is going to follow.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. Just before beginning, let me just flag it off to Mr. Jain that we did submit a few comments on the Rajasthan State EV policy draft, which we prepared in close consultation with many experts, and we have included the recent policy draft of Telangana as well into that. And we would just request you to an opportunity to maybe present it to the Transport Department as and when convenient, so that that may be taken up correctly. With that, let me now request Akshay to first launch the report and share it on screen. And the report will be up and live right about now. You can see the title as well as, so this report is now on the CUTS webpage. And you can go to cutccir.org. And so we request the feedback and suggestions from different people and request you to share it in your network. Especially if you have any critiques or criticisms for it, we'll be more than happy to engage and take it forward in a mutual way. So with that, I welcome all the speakers here who need no introduction as they are well known in the industry and otherwise. But for the ease of audience, let me just introduce them and tell the audience that what would be the main themes that we will be discussing and what these speakers would be bringing on the table. So the idea is to discuss how this transition to electric mobility will happen in a just, equitable and fair manner. And the three pillars on which we are measuring this justness are the environmental justness of it. That is how the environmental consequences of this transition are not skewed in favor of communities or in favor of anybody else, which Ms. Anumita Roy Chaudhary from Center for Science and Environment would be the perfect fit to shed light on. The next pillar that we'll explore will be the social justness of this transition, which involves the angle of jobs and skills around it, for which we have Mr. Arindam Lahiri from Automotive Skills Council of India. And finally, we'll discuss the the economic aspect of just transition, for which we have Aditya Ramji from Mahindra and Mahindra here. And this all will be discussed under the ambit of research and development and knowledge-based economic development, and the policy imperatives that it might entail, for which we have Mr. Ruchir Shukla from Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. So this is a request to all the speakers to please stick to the stipulated time limits. We will be going through multiple rounds of questions with them. We'll be doing at least 2 rounds with each of them. And we request the audience to please send their questions directly to the host. And we will take it up as and when they come in between. And we also request the speakers to maybe not, take it as a interview kind of a webinar. We want it to be as open as possible. So if anybody has a reflection to any point which has just been made, he or she may just come in at that point of time. But again, this will be the caveat that please be wary of the time limit. So let me now begin this panel discussion and invite Ms. Roy Chaudhary first to shed light on the basic question that is the concept of electric vehicles even fit for purpose for Indian cities? I mean, given your experience in the work across cities over on issues like urban transportation and sustainable transportation, I mean, what are some of the city level paradigms that we need to understand first in the way people commute or the way transportation happens, which needs to be understood before even building a case for zero emission mobility? 3 to 4 minutes, ma'am. First question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarthak, and thank you everyone, Guts and Mr. Mehta. It was great to hear Mr. Jain and all of you, the distinguished panel here, to reflect on the question, the very specific question that you've asked, Sarthak. So let me kind of just reflect on the fact that for me, someone like me who's so deeply involved with clean air issues, and I particularly being quite involved with the whole process of framing the clean air action plans for that's taking place right now in Rajasthan for the 5 non-attainment cities. And therefore, and I know that as part of that clean air action plan, there is already a provision and a mandate for electric vehicle policy in the state. And as we have just heard, Mr. Jain, that you are already in the process of finalizing the policy and the implementation strategy. So therefore, how do we have this conversation more grounded in the reality of the city that is Jaipur, for which you have done the study? And that you have made the job connection, which is very important, especially right now, when the entire policy in Rajasthan is evolving as a localization part of the industrial development policy as well. And it is very critical right now after the pandemic disruption that the green recovery should become part of the green recovery. And therefore, the whole job connection you have made is absolutely critical at this moment. So, but then, as you rightly asked, that how do we connect it with the larger paradigm of the city and the mobility? And that's what we really need to understand. So we need to understand mobility first before we plan for the electric mobility. Because, and here I just make this very critical connection, that when it comes to implementation, and you will face this challenge with the policy is going to provide for a whole range of supportive and enabling levers. But to make that happen, we know we have to address one of the biggest barrier, that is the consumer anxiety. And the consumer anxiety around range, speed, charging, and unless we deal with it, it will be tough to stimulate demand and to enable this. So how do we make that connection? So when you look at the commuting pattern in Jaipur, and I want to be very specific about Jaipur, if you look at the commuting pattern right now, so Jaipur generates about 33 lakh travel trips a day, okay? And this has increased by about 15% since 2008. But what is fascinating about the pattern in Jaipur, that the average trip length has increased just barely by 5 kilometer to 5.5 kilometer now. So, and for more than half of all trips in Jaipur are within 5 kilometer. So imagine therefore how electrifiable the whole commuting in Jaipur is. And at the same time, when you consider this from the consumer perspective, their obsession with not only range, but with speed. You look at the average travel speed today in the city, it is 15 to 18 kilometer. And in the peak hour, it's 10 to 12 kilometer. So majority of the people here are actually, they're traversing shorter distances. And the range, which is quite comfortably achieved in a single charge by almost all existing electric vehicle models in the market today. That's the potential and opportunity. And at the same time, when you look at the vehicle composition in the city, 20 out of the 24 lakh registered vehicle that we have, 73% of the vehicles are two-wheelers. And these are low load, low powered vehicles. Even 14% of urban cars are low speed vehicles today. So these are not highway vehicles. So EV charging infrastructure can therefore, can very well be responsive to this kind of demand, this kind of commuting pattern. And you can build the whole commuting and the charging can be planned accordingly. We don't have to think like IC engine petrol pump oriented network. We can be so much more inventive about where people live and where people go to work and where people park their vehicles to plan our charging infrastructure, and which is hugely doable. And also, when you look at the new RERA data for Jaipur, the amount of new construction that is happening in that city, if you adopt the right EV, EV-led the charging facility in those buildings, you can make an amazing change. And the final couple of points that I just want to highlight, that while that is about the personal vehicles, but also keep in mind that in a city like Delhi, Jaipur, there's a huge opportunity also for the IPT, the paratransit, the ride sharing, and the buses that you have. But these are the more high mileage vehicles. They will do at least from 120 to 200 kilometers a day. So for that, you need a separate charging approaches, and that can be more opportunity based. This can be linked to your terminals where people are, and therefore lot more innovative strategies are possible. And then as we just heard Mr. Jain, he said that we can be innovative about high footfall areas like tourist places, which is unique advantage of Jaipur. And therefore, if you identify those areas as the old Jaipur areas, which are very high footfall, pedestrianize those areas, but create the linkage with the green recovery electric mobility linkage. I mean, that is a win-win that you can, really move towards a massive electrification. So with that, therefore, if you also have a very innovative parking policy, and you should know that in Rajasthan today, there is already a policy for proof of parking. And if the parking area management plan can be implemented along with an innovative parking charging approaches, then just imagine what is the double whammy is all about. So understand, in a city, as our surveys have shown, there's a huge dormant demand for electric vehicle actually. If you ask the dealers, they will tell you the number of people who come to ask for electric vehicle. But majority of that demand, the most of that demand does not get realized in terms of actual sale because of all these anxiety issues of the consumer and the infrastructure bottleneck. So with that, I'll end here to say that here is an opportunity to stimulate consumer demand by understanding the mobility pattern in the city and then build the electric mobility paradigm based on that. So I'll end here for the moment.
Right. Thank you, ma'am, for starting on such a positive high, for really providing evidence to how, Jaipur is a fit for purpose case for electric mobility owing to different changes in the community pattern. Let me pick up a few keywords from your submission. One was we have to be innovative, and technology will play a crucial role in how best we can address the challenges that you also rightly mentioned of range anxiety and demand side consumer preferences. So at this point, to answer or to shed light on the innovation and technology aspect of it, let me invite Mr. Ruchir Shukla from Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. And let me put this question in this way that, as we have so far discussed, that there are certain challenges in the way this technological transformation of EVs is going to be adopted or is looking at knocking at our doors right now. But technological advancement can also address some of these challenges in this transformative technology of EVs. And as I know, you are a staunch follower and supporter of innovative technologies being employed and deployed for the betterment of the sector. So what is your assessment currently of the current levels of tech uptake and innovative technologies in the EV or auto sector space, and what more is required on that front? Again, 3-4 minutes introductory. Thank you. I can't hear you, Mr. Shukla. So while you work on it, maybe I can invite Aditya at this point. Right. So you try and figure that out, and let's move on with Aditya for now. To basically, there's this a lot of discussion has happened around the techno-economic challenges with electric mobility. A recent report by CEW also says that close to 12.5 lakh of investments are in the pipeline if Niti Aayog's targets are the revised targets of Niti Aayog are met. So investment is going to come here, but there are critiques of this top-down approach of only maybe looking at low carbon technologies from an investment point of view, which ignores in turn how the consumer income or purchasing power of consumers take place. A recent article by Dr. Ratin Roy is a testimony to this, where he mentions why, and he explicitly says electric vehicles also, why we should be creating solutions which are affordable for the large mass of Indian consumers rather than just being a premium product for the rich. So do you think we need to move from, say, techno-economics to economic inclusivity? And what are the aspects of that, what is being done or what more could be done from an enterprise or sector economics point of view? Over to you, Aditya.
Sure. Thanks, Arthak. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Perfect. Okay. No, fair question. I think before I get into the details of this, I think the point that one must understand clearly is private sector will not invest in something if the economics are not viable. So it's not that the industry has any great interest in creating vehicles that are not affordable. I think there's no point, right? I mean, there's no point me creating a 30 lakh car which nobody's going to buy. There are challenges in terms of technology, in terms of capabilities that we have in India in general as an industry. And I think those are separate questions that we should answer and maybe not for this forum. But I'll just leave it at that to say that definitely it's not in anybody's interest to create that are not affordable. But coming to the point of affordability and inclusivity, see, absolutely point taken. And I really liked the point that Anumita made a little earlier about looking at how she broke down the trip lens. And that's in fact exactly the way ideally we also look at the market, right? I mean, when we want, we equally agree that yes, electrification is inevitable, we need to do it. And I think the last couple of years, the auto industry in general has also acknowledged the fact that they need to go along with this transition. We did the BS6 in record time. So I think that's fairly reflective of the commitment that the industry started to make now. And then this increasing government industry trust deficit gap that we're slowly bridging. But having said that, right, I mean, from an affordability perspective, we need to take a step back and look at a few things beyond just affordability. So one, we need to, yes, affordability in terms of the vehicle itself, but also affordability to the user. At what price per kilometer do you offer that service to the user is important. Second, the use case becomes equally important, where you're applying electrification, right? So we normally are nowadays very often which in my mind is not the right way to do it, but we often take electrification and mobility as one and the same thing. Whereas actually you need to take a step back, understand what are the mobility patterns and demands that people have, and then decide where electrification would ideally fit in, depending on what the industry can deliver. And then we should have a strategy in place saying, okay, we should look at three-wheeler or two-wheeler or whatever segment form factor that we're talking about. I think we've been approaching this problem the reverse way in the last 3 years, and it's time that we try to take this right way. We cannot electrify overnight 100%, and I think those are very unfeasible and very utopian targets that we all have in our mind. A phased approach is absolutely essential. But having said that, one other pillar that has gotten unfortunately compromised in this narrative around electrification is safety. Take the e-rickshaw example, and Jaipur and Rajasthan is full of it. Large part of North India is full of this, but it required a Supreme Court intervention a couple of years ago to actually ensure that these vehicles are registered, because there were a few accidents, and their capability of body strength and their balance, etc., and their chassis strength, everything is there is no form of regulation that covers these vehicles. So I think it's equally important. Would you buy an IC engine vehicle that does not meet a safety standard? You wouldn't. Why should I compromise a customer, whether it's a driver, owner, or a user, their safety when they're traveling in a vehicle, either on personal mobility or shared mobility, just because we are in this hurry to electrify things and try to make costs at parity, right? In my mind, these are very uncompromisable parameters that we need to have very clearly in front of us when we are defining how we want to approach this idea of clean mobility or electrification. That's the first part. Second part, coming to the economics of it. Today, if you look at three-wheelers, right, we are at par today with the FAME subsidy that the government is giving today. A three-wheeler electric passenger auto is at par with a typical CNG auto that is already plying in the market today in terms of its TCO per kilometer. Yes, the acquisition cost is marginally higher by about 20, 30, 40,000 rupees. But if you look at the life cycle cost, definitely much cheaper. And that obviously that's reflected the fact that the TCO over a 7-year period fits in right there. So I see this as a clear win-win opportunity. And if you were to talk about this in context of most states, right, including Rajasthan, it's only, I think, this 8 or 10 metro cities that really talk about higher or more expensive form factors in terms of mobility. A large part of the rest of India still continues to rely on short trips and vehicle form factors that are typical of three-wheelers or whatever. Now, here there are a few innovations that are possible, right? Today we want to do three-wheelers, economics fits very well. Tomorrow, we can also look at form factors like quadricycles. The electric quadricycle is almost a one step ahead, but a nicer and a more comfortable form factor for a lot of urban travel and urban commute. And you can look at electrification around that, right? What we find often is that state governments, in their rush to form regulations, etc., look at it very narrowly from what is there today. No policy is looking at it, I'm not even saying 10 years, at least look at it from the next 2 to 3 year perspective. Right. We lack a future proofing of policy. And I think that's where we need the state to be a very proactive role player in this process of saying, how do you define and enable regulation to actually allow the industry to innovate and bring to you solutions that meet the needs of consumers, right? And I think there, since Mr. Jain mentioned about Rajasthan's state policy, we've also as an OEM had a chance to interact. But I think a couple of points, right? And the ecosystem development is not as challenging as one makes it out to be. Anumita talked about charging, and she made absolutely valid points. And just to maybe add to that, we have an obsession around DC fast charging. Look at every newspaper article, they talk about DC fast charging. You don't need that. You don't need that for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. You can make do with AC charging. The costs are massively lower. Your ability to create a basic skeletal charging ecosystem costs absolutely very minimal amounts. And the state doesn't even have to put in money. If you can easily give people the clarity around parking areas and define charging areas and spots and everything else, there are enough private sector players and ecosystem players who will happily come in and put in the capital required to set up infrastructure like this. And these, in my mind, the role of the state, therefore, has to be that of an enabler and get out of this thing of, we need to look at, so we need to look at this whole transportation narrative is a little different, right? You need to bring in the aspects of urban planning. We need to get out of the old way of the way we looked at transportation, where we just, we only regulated vehicles in terms of how, in terms of standards and other things, but we never regulated transportation per se. We never regulated the value chain. I think that's where the state has to come in and play a role, because all of that will define how my economics ultimately work out. I can always create a vehicle that costs 3 lakhs, can theoretically meet all economics, but when I actually get down to the operations, sometimes there are hidden costs and struggles where it becomes very hard for us to actually scale these initiatives and solutions that the industry kind of works around. I think the state therefore needs to play that role and needs to look at setting new rules of the game if they're very clear about how they do this. And I know that for the limited bit that I know of the Clean Air Action Plan work that's been happening in multiple states and cities, maybe a question that we need to actually ask is how does the state actually play a role in regulating a lot, or rather making it easier operationally to enable electrification of certain segments, because that's currently not, if I understand correctly, Anupta can correct me, I don't think those are kind of questions that anybody's asking. We are not looking at, we love strategizing at a 20,000 foot level, but we forget that there is a huge amount of operational bottlenecks on a day-to-day basis that we don't seem to correct for. And in my mind, just that itself can resolve 70% of the problems of how we can scale up a lot of these solutions. So for me, that in my mind is ideally the way to go. And
can you hold the next point? Maybe we'll come back to you on this, because we have other speakers also waiting, and we'll weave it into a format that we get to the point when it's required to do so. So I'll get to Mr. Lahiri in a while, but I think Mr. Ruchir's microphone is working now.
Am I audible?
Yes, Mr. Ruchir. So the same question, technological adaptation, and then we'll link it with role of states and what Aditya mentioned, the low cost, low affordable mobility, which is required in that.
Yeah, thank you, Sarthak. So let me quickly just take a few seconds to introduce Shakti. Shakti is a not-for-profit organization. It works with a set of CSO partners, universities, think tanks, subject matter experts globally to facilitate India's transition to a cleaner energy future through a focused set of interventions in policies and promoting through clean power, energy efficiency program, sustainable transport, clean energy finance, and electric mobility initiative. We call it EMI. EMI per se is a multi-funder platform, and it mobilizes philanthropic effort with an aim to accelerate electrification of automobiles and complete decarbonization of India transport sector by 2050 is our goal. We promote cross-learning through national and sub-national engagement, as well as leveraging international best practices and cooperation. Coming back quickly to the question you have asked, which is very relevant in today's time, we do look at it kind of a technology, R&D, and infrastructure as a key pillars which need to be more strengthened with kind of a global mindset, which also links up with the Atmanirbhar Bharat, where we are able to bring the products and solutions of international quality and having export worthy to all sorts of countries. That's the overall objective what we have. So there is a need of global mindset, strong determination, and a long view, because today in the transport domain, it's a big shift from the conventional ICE engine to electric mobility as an absolutely big change. And therefore, people should not apply the incremental time approach. They should look at it the next era of, say, few decades with electric mobility. And that's the way looking into the all economics, etc., and building the base in that sense, especially when we are moving towards the next generation of solution, which is like electric mobility. The understanding of global technology and solution options and applying them with very important aspect, that is our local skill set and knowledge. And getting into the very high speed in terms of taking all these challenges directly head on towards that's going to be a key to success. As we all know, like any other geography, on the ground end user needs are unique to our country, right? The way people interact with the product, the level of stressed use or in terms of abuses the product really look at are unique to our country. And we live every day. So the skill set to know these challenges and translate in various solutions, business solutions, technical product definitions is something no external word can quickly gain it. And that's the failure modes, which is very critical for the success. And that's the best thing where a lot of employment opportunity is going to be. What we need incremental knowledge, a subject knowledge, and some of the technological and application knowledge that is need to be leveraged from the various countries and geographies. Now, having said that, the whole of this working style will give a further, realization of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And what we look at it, that similar examples we have been observing, which if we go back to history in last few decades, we have seen it happening in space, IT, telecom, and also recent time in defense. Now, current level of innovation in EV sectors need a lot more energy that is certainly needed, being absolutely new orbit, resources and set of standardization, policies and mandates that promote EVs in all vehicle segments, as well as charging infra we talked about. It is not that we just limit ourselves here. More focus is to be more emphasis and focus is going to be on heavy duty commercial vehicle, and fleet corridors need to be electrified The reason is the heavy duty commercial vehicle contribute to a very large number of carbon emissions, and that's where it becomes critical, along with that tier 1 and tier 2 parts. That's what I have with the last statement, that numerous services solution, both in private as well as fleet owners, will give much more opportunities for startups. And that's end of it. Over to you, Sarthak.
Thank you, Ruchir. In fact, you made my job as moderator easier by feeding in the question on plate for Mr. Lahiri. Till now, we have heard about the technological buzzwords that are knocking at the doors and are very much required for easing this transition. We have seen that there is an environmental and demand side rationale for electric mobility, as well as we have seen that there is an appetite with enterprises and OEMs to produce vehicles at a cost and with all the safety and other parameters in place that are required to be or that are likely to be adopted. But again, what remains is the skill challenge that this sector faces. So for the sake of time, because you also have to leave early, I'll just pose both the questions to you in one go. What are the existing challenges that you see in the auto sector skill ecosystem, as well as for EV manufacturing? What are the facets of skill development required, and what is your opinion on the entire ecosystem around sector skill councils or any reforms in the skill development that you foresee at your end? Over to you, Mr. Lahiri.
Thank you, Sarthak. I think it's been a very engaging discussion right from the word go, and what I heard from the other speakers as well. And I was going through some parts of the reports that you had shared early on, and also very useful from our perspective. As you would know, ASDC is one of the first sector skill councils which works basically between the government and the industry in terms of meeting the skill requirements. And electric vehicle, so let me first answer the question that you asked on the manufacturing auto sector skill challenges, overall challenges. One of the major challenges that you have for auto sector is that the younger population, finds usually a lot of them do not find automotives as exciting as IT or telecom kind of industries, where there's a lot more, affinity in terms of taking up or trying to get into a career around it. So one of the first level of challenges to make automotive more exciting as a career. While I say this, we also know that there is a lot of focus on automotive at the engineering level, whether it's at a diploma or a degree level. But what we need in the automotive sector is also a lot of entry-level people who would need to understand working on environments which are highly sophisticated. So as far as the manufacturing industry is concerned, you would know that almost 50% of the manufacturing GDP is contributed by the automotive industry. And it's also one of the most sophisticated manufacturing systems that we have in the country, because we have all the global brands who are working here. Thankfully, the industry itself has been very deeply engaged in skill training for their own manpower requirements in absence of an ecosystem around it. And we are currently using riding on top of it in terms of getting the industry involved in various initiatives where they could actually start looking at partnering with training institutions, academic institutions, in terms of providing the necessary expertise in terms of the curriculum, in terms of the training of trainers, in terms of assessment processes, infrastructure, all of that, essentially. So overall, I think while there is a challenge, but I think we're slowly overcoming that challenge, and most part of the requirement is met. The large number of employment that happens within the extended automotive chain, value chain, as I would say, is in the service network, which requires a lot of people, especially when you look at the IC engine vehicles, obviously needs a lot of servicing, and there's a lot of requirement of drivers. So these are very large employment generating job roles that are there within the automotive. Now, coming specifically to the electric vehicle part of it, I'll take the two easy areas within automotive. According to your study, also they're not very deeply affected, which is the sales function and the driving function. So while the numbers may not get affected there in terms of electric vehicles coming in, but there will be a knowledge and a skill upgradation in terms of how to sell an electric vehicle will be quite different from how to sell an IC engine, comparable IC engine vehicle model. So that sensitivity, that upskilling of the existing manpower, and in terms of while training fresh manpower for the industry, that sensitivity will also require to be built in. Again, with the drivers, when you are looking at drivers, you largely deal with drivers who drive it professionally. That is where we get into our training in terms of bus drivers or commercial vehicle drivers. Where as I think somebody was already saying that in commercial vehicle you have larger ranges to talk about, and in terms of driving habits, how does it affect the charging? How does various recharging cycles affect the life of the battery? These are elements that, in terms of driver education, which is also very important. And not only electric vehicle is an addition of a battery, but I think there is a lot more technology that comes into it, because there is a lot more diagnostics, lot more electronics which are there built into the vehicle in terms of the control system. So again, that migration in terms of skills and knowledge is very important there. Finally, in terms of the segment for manufacturing and service network, service, for instance, will become much more sophisticated in the sense that one will have to use the various diagnostic softwares to be able to locate where the faults are, and it's not really getting under the bonnet of the car and trying to fix something. That mentality of servicing will not work here. And which is where we are looking at specific job roles that we are creating in partnership with DFID UK and ARAI Pune in terms of job roles specific for electric vehicle technicians. In terms of manufacturing and R&D, I think there's a lot more that will have to be done in terms of electric vehicle. When we looked at IC engine vehicles, I think the focus was a lot more in trying to efficiently manufacture things, because there was a lot more manufacturing to be done. While in this particular case, a lot of these manufacturing will actually go to the specialists in terms of the components. Where a lot of effort will be required is in terms of what we call as engineering or R&D kind of a backbone that we need to develop, because we're talking about a rapidly changing technology environment where people need to understand this. They also need to understand how does it impact the entire vehicle. So it is not only about just putting in a motor or a battery, but also understanding how does it impact your design of your tires, how does it impact your design of the overall weights, how do you do the weight distributions, how do you have tire wear management done. All of these areas are very critical in terms of understanding it, and we are doing that very specifically. Just the last point in terms of women, engaging women into the workforce is again one of the very key agenda that we are working on, and electric vehicle opens up that opportunity. In fact, we have initiated a very specific project which is supported by the World Bank, especially for the state of Rajasthan, where we are looking at training a specific batch of women for EV service technicians for 2-3-wheelers, because that's the largest segment. So we're looking at creating specific manpower which can be engaged in their local geographies by the relevant dealerships. And also because we expect a lot more women to be using these kind of vehicles for the short trips, for the local commute, etc. I think they will also find it much more easier to kind of communicate with women at the service stations being there, and that gives them much more comfort to kind of go ahead with this kind of a product. So I think that's it. If there are any other specific question, I'll be happy to take up.
Right.
But as I said, I'll have to leave towards 5:30.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larry, and for elucidating these various elements of how socially just this transition would be vis-a-vis the skill development and jobs angle. Let me be a little opportunist at this point and plug in a request for a favor from you that we'll be conducting a part 2 of this study over the course of next 6 months, in which we'll be looking at the skill development angle in depth in major auto manufacturing hubs in Manesar and Coimbatore, Bangalore, for which we'll be soon reaching out to you, and we'd request your
Sure. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I mean, given that we have now discussed the social angle of just transition, let me invite Ms. Roy Chaudhary again for highlighting how the facets of environmentally making it a just or a fair transition would look like, because it is aptly said that an EV is as green as the power sector of that country and the manufacturing process that follows. So so essentially it implies that we need to deploy a systems approach in breaking down what these systems are, which are making it either environmentally good or bad. So can you help decode it for our audience, that what this system looks like and what will be the elements of an environmentally just transition to an electrified future of mobility? Over to you, ma'am. This is the last round, so maybe 4 minutes in closing.
Right. Thank you so much, Sarthak. So it was really fascinating to hear Aditya, Ruchir, and Mr. Lahiri. And it's a very important question that you have raised, because every time we say electric vehicle, the first question that is asked is it really green? Is it really clean? What about the power source? Because more electrification you have, you're going to have more coal power plants, therefore more emissions, and therefore we are not winning it at the end of the day. So that's why I think it's very important for us to demystify this whole idea about the power source. So what is it? Now let's understand first that why electric vehicles still makes eminent sense in our cities that are extremely polluted and when we are facing a health emergency due to air pollution. Having zero emission tailpipe in our vehicles is hugely, hugely beneficial. But then, what does it mean in terms of power source? Now, just try and understand one thing, that at this moment, when we are using IC engine, for each and every tailpipe, which means billions of tailpipes across the country, you are trying to do decentralized emission control. So every time we say now we are moving for Bharat stage 4 to 6, and which we have done just now, what does it mean? You're just making the technology of the IC engine and its emission control more and more complex, more and more sophisticated, but at the same time hugely vulnerable to its operational maintenance. And if these new technologies in your IC engine tailpipe don't work, then you are going to have uncontrolled emissions, even after making that huge investment in the new IC technology. And all transport departments today across the country are facing the challenge that how do you go beyond the PUC program, so basic, to actually have systems that will really keep an eye on the real world emissions from IC engines. Now, instead of that, suppose you stop controlling emissions at the tailpipe level, it becomes completely zero emission. But you do centralized pollution control at the power plant level, and which is much easier to do. So that's first thing. And as we know that in this country today, we are moving to the next level of emission standards for coal power plant. And therefore we need to keep making that tighter and tighter. And we have to have clean coal power generation till the time the renewable energy portfolio expands the way it needs to expand. Yes, currently, if you take the total electricity generation, then coal is about 70%. But we also know that renewable is also 10%. And if we go by seriously take our Paris commitment, then by 2030, renewable energy will be 40%. But the key advantage here is, just understand that in electricity, even without changing the infrastructure for your electricity supply, you can change the source of electricity. You can infuse the grid with cleaner and greener electricity as we keep expanding our renewable portfolio. That is not the case with petrol or diesel. or natural gas. So that is the advantage that we have to keep in mind. And therefore, we'll say that this environmentally, that's a reason why electric vehicle makes so much more sense. And also today globally, when we are facing the climate change challenge and the air pollution challenge, the actual high level of ambition is needed in electrification today to meet or contribute towards that 2-degree temperature change. Having said that, now what we really have to focus on, ensure that India's renewable energy portfolio expands the way and with a very high level of ambition. But in that, we have to pay certain attention to the electricity grid infrastructure, because currently, even though we have gone into generation of renewable, but at this level, we do not have grid scale storage system. So therefore, it is highly variable. Only when, so you can infuse higher RE at some parts of the day, but there are also low points. And therefore, there's a big role in all cities, whether that's Rajasthan, a state like Rajasthan or others, and Rajasthan particularly, which has a very high renewable energy portfolio. That's the state everyone is looking up to. So here you have a real win-win. So if the DISCOMs and the electric vehicle programs come together so that you are able to match the RE generation time of the day with the for the charging. And you can do that with a kind of tariff. You can have a variable variable tariff, which can be adjusted according to the availability of the RE. And so those are the issues that we will have to address, because at this moment you should know that because we do not have grid scale storage, we are also wasting a lot of renewable energy today. In fact, they say it is equal to the total supply for a year for a city like Mumbai. But therefore, more innovative strategies are possible, and DISCOMs and all they need to come together to ensure that we create that right platform to monitor the real-time generation data for RE sources and manage the electric vehicle program well. So these are the reason why I would say that we look at it from the environment perspective. Electrification makes the very good environmental sense, both from public health perspective and climate change perspective.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary, for highlighting that. And if you could also stay up for a couple of more minutes, because there's a question from the audience directed towards you. Next, I can switch on to Aditya now, maybe, for his last word on. So I recall you had a concern when we shared the findings with you in the initial days also, that jobs created versus jobs lost due to the electrification. So I spare the audience the time of listening to my question again, and just maybe over to you for highlighting on the jobs aspect of it.
No, thanks, Sarthak. Just before I get into that, Namita, I couldn't agree with you more on what you just said. And I think often we call it the new energy partnership, right? Where a lot of us in this value chain need to understand each other much better in the way we're looking at the context slightly differently. Coming back to Sarthak, your question. No, I think Arindam put it very nicely, and just a couple of points. I think I don't think that we will end up with jobs lost net if we were to be able to figure out a smart migration strategy to this whole thing, right? Rather than doing ad hoc efforts in the way we look at the transition to electric, if we are a little smarter and put our minds behind it as stakeholders, I think a good migration strategy would enable us to actually protect jobs and have enough time and headway to be able to transition certain job skills that may be required, because some will become redundant and some will need to upgrade themselves and move to newer skill sets. But look at it like this, right? I think from a value chain perspective, on the manufacturing side, while at the same time, yes, as we do more and more EVs, there will be some aspects of the IC engine that will go away, but there will be new aspects that will come in. So nowadays, just look at it like this. I mean, today we talk about connected cars. Look at the number of features we build inside a vehicle. And that has nothing to do with IC engine or electric. It's just the way we design vehicles inside it. And there is so much value added ecosystem that's developed on the auto component side and the vehicle manufacturing side outside the OEM because of these new things that get added, right? So there is always a process ongoing every time we keep moving on with technology. And I think we need to look at it from that perspective. So there are these value additions that are happening anyway. And some skills, even in the IC engine ecosystem, have become redundant with time and have gone away, right? So it's not 100% this way or that way. Second is, I think Arindam put it very rightly. So there is going to be a requirement for us to start looking at the way we skill our workforce, because there's going to be a much greater focus on electronics, because EVs will largely be a lot of that. And I think, and it's not something that's been found wanting now. It's something that we as manufacturing in India have been struggling with. And that's testament to the fact that our manufacturing value share has been constant at around 17% for so many years, right? And it is something that we need to have a strategy on. And this is not just specific to EVs. I think we need a much larger industry strategy on this. And while we look at EV components, take for example motors. There are many other sectors, by the way, outside the EV industry that actually also require very similar components. We have not, in fact, even looked at the way we can aggregate sourcing for a lot of these components that cut across multiple sectors. Some power electronics, some PCBs, some motors, etc. And if we are able to do that, in my mind, we will be able to actually move people, even with certain similar skill sets, and add new jobs as we are able to find scale efficiencies, for certain components across the value chain. And this will then cut across multiple industries, right? So a motor, for example, is 8 kilowatt or a 5 kilowatt motor can go in a 3-wheeler and could potentially go in a large air conditioner, right? So we need to look at synergies like these, in my mind, to actually look at how we are able to manage the job transition. The last bit is the extended value chain on the ecosystem side. So just the way we had petrol pumps coming up, we will have charging stations coming up. You will have, and in my mind, the way I look at it is charging will come up in a much more decentralized fashion. So you will be able to create a lot more micro entrepreneurs in a certain sense who can actually build, operate, and run these setups. One part that we keep talking about, but we haven't really acted on, is the end of life for a vehicle itself and the end of life for the battery also. So battery, as you know, has two options. One, it could completely be recycled, or there are a lot of potentials in terms of second life applications that we're already talking about in the industry. And a lot of these can create significantly value add jobs on the ecosystem side. So I think there is definitely merit in having a deeper discussion around some of these things, and then be able to decide how we want to figure out the job transition, the skill transition. I think then we would have a much better idea of whether it's going to be net loss or a net gain. But just, broadly thinking, I still feel that there is opportunity to have a net gain if we're able to just think about this a little more smartly. Thanks.
Thank you, Aditya. Just moving to Ruchir, he also has to leave now, but it's a really, insightful or good question for all the aspiring researchers we have in the participant list of, what do you think, in your opinion, is the current status of policy-based research in the space of EVs? And as the head of electric mobility at SACF, what are some of the areas in which you foresee are the low-hanging fruits or ripe for research areas in this? Ruchir, over to you. Last one.
Yeah, thanks, Sarthak. As I said, first of all, we are pretty keen and clear that there is a huge amount of work yet to start. And with the aim of decarbonizing India transport by 2050, even that's a very, very big, aggressive milestone. And what I'm looking at, we all are, finding that more and more work is done in this space, engaging government, regulators, NGOs, private and public, many participants, all critical participants at all possible levels. And particularly, we look forward to growing our engagement in existing partnerships, as well as starting many new collaborative work, both with the existing and new partners in this space. Just to give a quick flavor of places where we have been working together, we have been working starting from FAME 2 in policy for Delhi, Telangana recently, done some of the researches for bus procurement for Delhi, Bangalore, Calcutta, capacity building of state transport units, setting up the mobility forum where people can exchange a lot of ideas and cut across a lot of learning. The decision-making framework starting from two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler onwards to buses, along with the EV charging tariff framework, vehicle-to-grid integration, e-mobility ecosystem, and transitional challenges. So these are a couple of things we have been deeply engaged, have worked. A number of research reports are available on that. Some of the upcoming and ongoing priorities, what we have is engaging with city government agencies for specific to EV policies, working with the states like Rajasthan, Punjab, West Bengal, Gujarat, Telangana. These are the, a lot of opportunities bringing the first time policy and much more to look at amendments, because with the expectation and, policy attributes going much and more better, there are a lot of energy among the various states to really relook at it and bring it more competing and compelling policy interventions. We work very closely with citing some of the charging infrastructure tools, which helps public and at large policymakers to use that to find the certain use cases, simulation results for them. We are very committed to look for every intervention which helps to grow local manufacturing of globally competitive EVs and tier one components. We are very, very committed for that. We would be continuously working on zero emission vehicle manufacturing and fleet level mandates, promoting electrification of long haul buses and heavy duty trucks, which I said in the previous conversation. The heavy duty trucks and commercial vehicle is one of the very important, but so far less seen or talked about space, and that is what we are very keen. Having said this, a couple of quick things I wanted to share, which among the few of the fellow speakers have talked about. One question was on the IT policy, on the IT section. So EV today, EV ecosystem is a bigger than any company's IT system. It transacts data which is worth much more than the multi-storied building with respect to in real times. So kids and today new engineers are finding it so challenging and so exciting. So I was a bit differing on that view. It is the new place for any new kid to find any option they want to talk about. They want to do a visualization, styling, it's there. Want to work on the ground, mechanical parts, it's there. Want to work on IT specific communication, diagnostic, it's all there. And to the next level. Second thing is what I think Roy Chaudhary has very well said, and I think the Aditya also. In the existing ecosystem of transportation IC engine, we are already hitting to 90+% saturation. So large effort, large money, large resource deployed gains hardly 1%. This is the space same resource deployment will deliver for 20, 30 years, much more impactful results. So that's a huge big shift in visualization. The third important thing is employment. We know that mobility is always going to be growing. Seeing that IC engine, assuming hypothetically not being produced today, will create what? A vacuum space. And who got to fill it up? EV has to fill it up. Even if we hypothetically assume all EV going to be, how much of opportunity this will create? In the previous case, it was only incremental skill set and opportunities. In this case, all new. I can't believe more on this, that there is going to be a multiplier effect of in terms of the employment opportunity, both in technical side, service side, support side, solution side, everywhere. A lot of such things have come out of this discussion. I'm very thankful to everyone up here. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sarthak.
Thank you, Mr. Shukla. And I take it as a personal motivation as an independent researcher, and more so as a representative of CUTS, because we hope to start our work in Rajasthan also soon, and we are well aligned on some of the areas that you mentioned. So now we have already overshot the time, but it's still positive to note that many of the participants have still stayed with us. I'd just like to give Ms. Roy Chaudhary the last word. One of our very bright researchers at CUTS, who is also the co-author of this report, Aman, he has asked a question that if the final goal is in the end to reduce the carbon emissions in the transportation sector, Do you think we are too much focused on EVs as the only solution, or do we also need to look beyond the canvas to look at other means like non-motorized transport, or maybe developing a walking or a cycling ecosystem in cities? That's a final question. Thank you.
Very important question, I must say. So let's say that, the kind of challenge that we are facing today, and Ruchir just said that we need that grand visualization of where we want to be, right? Keeping that target in mind, it's not about either and all, it's all together. And we need a technology roadmap, transformational change in the technology roadmap, but we also need transformational changes in the mobility paradigm. And in this, we need a combination. So if we therefore go beyond IC engine, which is the current framework that we are looking at, because we have exhausted the paradigm of IC engines. And therefore, the next big challenge, the paradigm shift, will have to be the EV. And that's how the global marketplace is changing. If you look at it today, London, Berlin, Paris, they're all saying, setting a date by when they want to phase out the IC engine. Imagine how the global marketplace is going to change, and therefore the Indian industry has to respond to that to have the level playing field and to retain its competitiveness. But at the same time, understand the strength of India's mobility baseline. Even today, the majority of Indians, they're walking and cycling and using public transport. And therefore, zero emission mandate needs a broader understanding, which is electrification, but is also cycling and walking, and active transportation for healthy living and health security as well. So, which means today we have to understand our city ecosystem, design our cities in such a way that we have to maintain the compactness of the urban form so that we do not increase distances. So if cities remain walkable and cyclable, then majority of those who are today walking and cycling will be, that ridership will be retained. Plus, you will also have the people who will also shift then from the cars and personal mobility, and you can create the choice in the city. And if the city is cyclable and walkable, then it is also within the range of electrification. And that's the win-win strategy we have to look at. So look at it's a comprehensiveness of the policy strategy. And therefore today, whether it's a climate action plan, whether it's a clean air action plan, they're all looking at both the strategies together.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. I'll ask Aman if he has any follow-up questions, he'll write to you, and we'll anyway engage with you in our future endeavors in this space. With this, I like to now close this panel discussion. I thank everybody from my side, and I leave the vote of thanks to Ujjwal Kumar, who is a senior colleague at CUTS and heads the Center for Economic Regulation. Ujjwal, vote of thanks in closing. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sarthak. I listened to the whole event very carefully as a consumer, prospective consumer, and I also as a citizen. And while living in Jaipur, I want to breathe air that I breathed during the lockdown again, and want the same air to be passed on to my kids. So with this and all this to happen with the just transition, that it doesn't hurt anybody. The transition doesn't hurt, minimum hurt that we can do. So it was a very enriching debate and discussion. So not debate, it's a discussion, and very thankfully you have touched the environment, technology, and social and economic aspect of it. So let me put on record the vote of thanks on behalf of CUTS International to all the panelists, Anumita ma'am and Arindam, Ruchir, Aditya, and a special also thanks to FES and Government of Rajasthan. Ravi Janji took out time to share views with us, and to the end, all the participants who stuck to the last to hear to that. So thank you all, and see you. Listen to you again sometime in future. Thank you.